Good morning. Actually, it's good afternoon, isn't it? Good afternoon. It's just after 12 p.m. on Friday, the 19th of September, and you are live with Roger and Pascal, the marketing show, the live marketing show. And Pascal, we've not been around for a while, have we?
Well, tech, very busy lives and more have conspired, but so pleased to be back for this bonus to our audio and video magazine, Two Geeks and a Marketing Podcast.
Yeah, we've taken a few months off over the summer, so there hasn't been a full episode of Two Geeks and a Marketing Podcast for a few months, but we're trying to get back into our regular routine of issuing an episode of Two Geeks and a Marketing Podcast each month, and that's our magazine show with all its different segments, content spotlights, film marketing, in the news, that sort of thing. And then 2 weeks later, we shall be doing a Roger and Pascal marketing live show, which is a little bit more off the cuff. And we have three segments that we're looking at. We look at Marketing Made Simple. We're looking at Speaker's Corner and Film Marketing Revisited. So it's a shorter, more compact, a little bit more fast moving, and extremely impromptu live session. And we're broadcasting on LinkedIn.
Super. And yeah, we basically wanted to find ways to share a bit more practical advice, share some updates about what we're up to, but really helping you, viewers and listeners, with your next marketing efforts. And very often, the three segments you mentioned, Roger, would be inspired by our own work, our own interaction with clients, mentees, and event organizers. And yeah, looking forward to the next half hour.
So we're going to talk about Marketing Made Simple, and and everybody who watches Two Geeks and the Marketing Podcast, anybody who knows you and I, will know that I'm absolutely obsessed with keeping marketing simple.
Yes,
And
and sorry, Roger. I wanted to then use this, return to the live with Roger and Pascal to revisit something that you have mentioned many a time, but I thought the timing was impeccable as people's diaries are getting busy again, which is the circle of simplicity. I remember vividly you launched it or introduced it on LinkedIn some time back, and I was thinking, yes, exactly. Finally, Roger has managed to capture and has, kind of put together a bit of a framework, which we've called the circle of simplicity. And I'm just doing it for me, frankly, Roger. I want you to kind of take us back to how you came up with the idea. And of course, if you don't mind, take us through the circle again of simplicity at the different stages.
yeah, I think this all started when I was writing my book, Cats, Mats, and Marketing Plans, which came out during the pandemic. That's 4 years ago now. I launched it no, it's 5 years, late 2020. And it's ironic that the book that I wrote was all about keeping marketing simple. As I've just said, I'm really obsessed with keeping marketing simple. Um, and I came up with this idea of how to put together a marketing strategy as simply as possible. And that was what the book was about. And ironically, it wasn't until about 6 months after I'd published the book and I'd started to get sales and I started revisiting it that I came up with this visual framework, which actually would have been ideal for the book in itself. To express the way that I want people to put marketing strategies together. And if there's ever going to be a second edition of the book, then the circle of marketing simplicity will effectively be in the book, and I'd obviously have to update the book to include a lot of stuff about AI and this, that, and the other, and the way the world works now. It's amazing that 5 years ago we weren't even thinking about things like AI. So, as you know, Pascal, I have this career-long obsession, not only with simplicity, but also with strategy. And it's really sad that quite a lot of marketing disciplines, a lot of people who work in marketing, even though they may be extremely creative and they may be extremely talented, for whatever reason, whether it's an educational reason or whether it's just the role that they're in, they don't get to think strategically, or worse, they're not allowed to think strategically. It's all very tactical. It's all very much, let's go and create an advert, let's go and create a sales aid, let's go and create an online brochure, let's go and create a website. What they don't spend enough time doing is the strategic stuff that goes on behind it. And you cannot really do marketing tactics unless you've done the strategy first. And yet, how many times do you, as a marketing consultant, and it certainly happens to me, go into a company, have a conversation, and what they straight away ask you to do is something tactical. Will you do this for us? Well, and my answer to that is, well, hold on, let's do the strategy first. Oh, we're not interested in that. We just want results straight away. And how frustrating it can be that people just don't get the fact that actually you're probably not going to be successful with your tactics. You're not going to make any money with your tactics. You're not going to hit the right customers with your tactics unless you do the strategy first. And the circle of marketing simplicity aims to keep things as simple as possible. You can do strategy really, really quickly. So I'm going to put the graphic up now, Pascal. And there it is, the circle of marketing simplicity. And it starts off at the top with the customer. Who is it that you're targeting? Who are they? And I often say this in my talks, you need to create a deep, almost obsessive understanding of that customer. You know, what's their age? What's their socioeconomic status? How much disposable income have they got? What are their likes? What are their dislikes? And you really need to understand what makes them tick. Once you've got that, once you understand the customer, obsessively understand the customer, the second part is to create a standout offer. And I guess you can create the offer by following on from that obsessive understanding of the customer. You know who the customer is, and because you know who the customer is, you'll know what their problem is. What is the pain point that they have that you can solve with your product or your service? So, who's the customer? What's their problem? And then this is the most important bit. How does our standout offer help solve their problem better and preferably different to everybody else? And that's it. That's your offer. That's your product. That's your service. But I think it's very important to dwell upon those words better, preferably different. It's actually very easy to become better than somebody just by adding the odd bell and whistle onto a product or a service. But of course, everybody can do that, can't they? If you add a bell and whistle on, all your competitor needs to do is to add another bell and whistle on top of yours, and they're immediately better than you. The hard thing is to be different, because if you're different, you will stand out. And if you look at the world that we live in, how many products out there are effectively just the same as everything else? And the differentiation is in a tiny little way that's easy to replicate or to better. Once you've got your offer and you've got that deep understanding of the customer, create some exciting goals. Again, it's staggering how many people don't have the goals that they need for their marketing strategy. And the goal could be to have a certain level of profit. The goal could be to have a certain number of customers. The goal could be a certain amount of market share. It could be a goal set around net profit. It could be a goal set around gross profit. It could be a combination of measures. But if you don't have goals, you have nothing to measure. And if you don't have anything to measure, how do you know that you've been successful? And then once you've got that, that's when you get into the tactical stuff, which I guess is where most people start. And this is why it's such a problem, because you haven't done the first part. And that is the engaging promotions, the communications, the content, the activity. That's the stuff that hopefully will communicate to your customer why your offer is better and preferably different to everybody else's. And the final part of all of this just reflects what I was saying before, Pascal, about simplicity. We do need to keep things simple. And the world we live in is so complicated these days, and we allow that complexity to filter in. Now, as you know, I do a lot of my work within the financial services industry, and the financial services industry is so complicated. They don't do themselves any favors. So I think everything needs to go through a simplicity filter. So your product needs to go through a simplicity filter. The language you use needs to go through a simplicity filter. Cut out the jargon, cut out the gobbledygook, cut out the passive language. Keep it simple, keep it easy to understand. Talk in your customer's language, because if you have that deep, almost obsessive understanding of your customer, you'll know that they don't talk in passive language. They don't talk in jargon. They don't talk in complexity. They talk like a normal person would talk in a coffee shop or a pub. That's how we need to talk to them, and our processes and our language has to reflect that. So there you have it. That's the circle of marketing simplicity. You do all 5 of those steps, and you have yourself a really quite robust marketing strategy.
Well, I'm delighted. I know that, I say I was hoping to listen to it again. Actually, you know what is interesting? So, I've spoken about this for quite some time regularly for over the past few years. And I've heard and I've understood something new and different today, which I think is part of the strength of what you've designed, but also this idea of having to hear the message more than once. Because I think actually, and we've got to be careful, we've got other segments to get through, and I will ask you at a different episode about the cat on the mat as well as a reminder for everybody else. But you listening to you about the offer, I realized something very, very important is that very often what people do when they think about it through a marketing action plan strategy, they are actually thinking about products and services from this idea of you're going to itemize what it is, the key component part. But what you're saying is very different, which is that's for you to know. But what is on offer for the client? And I realized that the word offer is very, very important here, because you have to find a way to actually describe what is on offer from the client perspective, and what is essentially more than a transaction. It's an experience, and it's going to have more than the features of the service and the products. And there's also all the hidden kind of bonuses and so on. So thank you for that, because I realized that the term offer is very, very cleverly selected here, because it invites you to think it through more than just a statement of facts about your products and services.
No, I think that's very insightful. And the problem is, if you talk about products or you talk about services, you will inevitably get into a conversation about features. And we all know that if you start getting into features, that's when you start getting complex. And that's when industries start competing against each other in league tables. But it's all about features. It's never about how does the product itself meet the need of the customer, solve the issue the customer has. And yeah,
Mm.
that's a combination of the product, but it's also a combination of their experience and how you interact with them. So offer is absolutely the way that we need to describe this.
Smashing. Shall we move on to our next segment then, Roger, if you don't mind?
Yeah.
Speaker's Corner. So this one is actually in addition. So it doesn't exist as such within our audio video magazine. And it's because essentially, very flatteringly, you and I are sometimes asked, at events or after events, or when people listen to podcasts, to share tips and advice on how to improve one's kind of communication skills and speaking skills. And very recently, someone came to see me after an event, which is very, very nice of them to say, I really find what you do really inspiring, and I'd love to be a speaker myself. But I've heard that as a speaker, you need to have a signature talk. A signature talk. And they said to me, well, what is it and how do you create that? And so I'll share with you very quickly what I've mentioned, and then I'd love your input on that. So I said to them, well, to begin with, you don't need one. And I just be very, very careful about this. And I think maybe for me, the idea being that if you want to develop your skill as a speaker, you need to go on the journey. And perhaps you could begin by taking part in a panel Q&A. So you don't necessarily on your own on that stage or in that room talking to your colleagues maybe. And then little by little you deliver maybe a short practical session, then maybe little by little you provide a longer one. Maybe you're invited to open an event, maybe you can close an event. But the signature talk for me is as a result of observing life and looking at your interaction with customers, and then suddenly, out of nowhere, the spark of an idea, something you've observed, something that is inspiring or irritating, and you go, I need to say and explain something in a manner that others have not thought of. And so what I want to suggest to that individual is don't go online and do some keyword research. Don't go online and ask AI. I want you to go to into the world, observe what's out there, and follow your own kind of both feelings, intuition, and imagination. And that signature talk, or the core theme, or the core message that would be part of that signature talk, will reveal itself to you. So I could tell that that gentleman was disappointed because he was looking for a formula, he was looking for a recipe or something like this. And my reaction was, the reason why I came up with my signature talk on visual storytelling is because one day out of nowhere, I observed that people were finding something difficult to understand, but I also observed the fact that people were not paying enough attention to a particular facet of marketing. And little by little, it crafted itself. But it probably took me, I would say, years, Roger, to come up with my own unique signature talk that I had the pleasure of delivering at the Youpreneur Summit. But so that was essentially my interaction with that gentleman about you don't need one, but if you will have one, it's because it will reveal itself to you. Anyway, over to you. What do you think of this need for signature talk?
I think you're absolutely right. I don't think you need to have a signature talk, but let's face it, quite a lot of very highly accomplished speakers do have signature talks. I mean, there are speakers out there on the circuit who quite literally do the same speech at every single conference or workshop or whatever it is that they do, and they are being paid precisely to do that signature talk. Um, when I do speeches, I probably do. I have a signature talk. I think I have what I would call signature segments. So I tend to have elements that I can use to create a speech for a specific client. So, yes, I can do a segment which talks about the circle of marketing simplicity. I can do a segment which you mentioned before about the cat sitting on the mat. And I've also got other segments as well. There's one, quite an amusing one, about a guy called John the Wine Man, which I quite like, along with other ones which you might not have heard before. And I think that what I do quite like to do is somebody comes along and says, Roger, we'd like you to do a speech about how to put together a marketing strategy and to keep it simple. I can say, well, actually, I need segment 4, 7, 3, and the cat on the mat to finish it off. And there's my talk. Or it may be that they want it more to be a little bit more technical. So I've got some more stories which are a little more detailed, say around print production or website production or that sort of thing. But I think you're absolutely right. These segments develop based around your observations of the world. So I guess my John the Wine Man's segment came from a genuine experience that I had with a wine salesman. And he just completely blew me away with his knowledge and his personality. And I felt that that helped me to illustrate the importance of that deep, almost obsessive understanding of the customer, which I mentioned before. So, yeah, I think I would agree with you. Unless you effectively want to write a book, and we've both written books, so we could create signature talks based upon those books. But I do prefer that segmented approach. But if you want to do that and you want to retire on it and do that one speech and become known for it, then that's absolutely fine. But I think what you said about observation is absolutely key. Let's face it, comedians, playwrights, all the stories that make up so much content and entertainment all come from observing what's going on around us.
And that's why I was very keen to explain that it's rarely, I mean, it can be done mechanically, but you would rarely find the right talk and the right, I love that, by the way, signature segment by doing keyword research or the kind of, you've got to go out into the world and, for this to be part of a lived in experience. And what is lovely, though, about those signature talks and segments is that you can make them so personal that from an IP point of view and from essentially being different, it's a guaranteed one. Because if you combine passion, a profession, and lived in experience and those little anecdotes and stories. So the habit, of course, is to record them. So still have, pen and paper, with a little pad, I highly recommend. I told that gentleman, if you haven't started a blog, if you haven't um, started a podcast, a big S on a podcast, but you've got to get into the habit of articulating and expressing those stories. And it sounds, odd, but and then just let intuition guide you, and you'll know when this is a spark of an idea. You'll know, as Roger had said a moment ago, this could be a signature segment, and there's no hard science behind it.
Absolutely not. No, that's good advice. That's good advice. And stories are so important. And there are people out there who have created signature talks around creating stories. You've created a signature segment about how to use film, etc. So yeah, keep your eyes open, write it down or type it down, and it will develop from there. Our third segment of the show, of the live show, is film marketing revisited, and Pascal's rubbing his hands together. So, what in the main show, in Two Geeks and a Marketing podcast, each month we review in detail a film from the recent past or the way distant past, and we have a look not only at the film and how it was put together and the acting and the script and that sort of thing, but we do a deep dive into the actual marketing of that film. How did they do it? Was it um, just using trailers? Was it using posters? Was there a specific social media campaign? And you can again learn so much from that. So Pascal, where are we going today?
We're going to go back in time to the 90s, exactly 1980,
Mhm.
because 45 years ago, this may surprise some of our viewers and listeners, The Empire Strikes Back was
Ah,
released, sequel to the Star Wars: A New Hope, although back in 1977, people didn't know it was going to be obviously a hit. And what is interesting to observe in 2025 is that this year's been quite a few anniversary. The biggie was the 50th anniversary of Jaws, and as you know, Roger had the immense pleasure of hosting a special screening in Durham. But this year was also the 40th anniversary of Back to the Future and The Goonies. And what a year, and what a period was the 80s. We had the 35th anniversary of Goodfellas, which I've not
mhm.
seen for a very long time, and Pretty Woman. And you remember, Toy Story was 30 years ago.
Goodness
30
me.
years ago. And so it goes on. And then somehow, I think in there, The Empire Strikes Back got a bit forgotten about. Maybe they, you know, getting themselves ready for the 50th anniversary in 5 years' time. But I thought, well, let's pick that one because it deserves actually a bit of a shout out. But also in 1980, there was a couple of marketing tactics they used, which could make you smile, obviously 45 years on. But actually, at the time, it was so very clever. But also, let's remind ourselves, can you imagine what it must have felt like to work on the sequel of one of the most successful sci-fi movie of all times? I mean, the nervousness in the room, I'm guessing, and to do a sequel where at the time also sequels tended to be a poorer kind of follow-up. There was less budget, there was less interest usually. Sometimes they didn't have the same actors and that kind of things. But here we are, all our heroes that we've come to love from A New Hope are back, and they've got to make it as, if not more successful than the first one. And I can only imagine the pressure they will felt at the time.
Yeah, I mean, thinking back all those years ago, I mean, you just said there, A New Hope. Don't forget that the original Star Wars film, when it came out, was just called Star Wars. This whole episode 4, episode 5, etc. stuff didn't come along until later. So A New Hope, what on earth was that? I mean, I can't remember the exact time that they inserted the
Mm.
words New Hope into the prints that were being used when the original Star Wars was being shown in cinemas. But yeah, episode 5, The Empire Strikes Back, was what? I remember my dad saying, "How is this episode 5?" Um, but I was obviously, as I was at school, the we had no social media. We had all that was on, like things like children's TV. You had screen test and that sort of thing. You saw clips from the film on multicolored swap shop or Tiswas, if that's what you were watching on a Saturday morning. But the sort of anticipation and the build up for Empire Strikes Back was huge. And you're absolutely right, though. There was that undercurrent as well. It's not going to be as good as the original, is it? And then, of
Mm.
course, everybody went to see it. And not only was it as good as the original, it was probably better than the original. And of course, there was that huge, huge reveal, which was jaw-droppingly, stonkingly, awesomely well received by everybody, wasn't it?
Absolutely. Well, shall we talk about this? Because my memory serves me right. That was the one marketing tactic that you picked on, the clever use of rumors to try and hide the fact that there was an almighty reveal when people went to the cinema.
Yeah, so I mean, we all know now. I mean, it's historical fact that the big reveal was that Darth Vader was Luke Skywalker's father, and that's somewhat jaw-dropping moment when that reveal happened. But these days it would be almost impossible to keep a reveal like that secret, given the world we live in now with social media and instant communication. But in those days, even they were concerned with the um, information getting out there. So they sort of it's an age old thing, isn't it, to hide the truth, surround it by all sorts of other stuff. So they added quite a few other rumors, didn't they, and put them out there to sort of put people off the scent.
Yeah, they're very, very clever. Have you ever seen some of the Mark Hamill interviews when he's talking about when he's called into the office and there's George Lucas and although the producers say, right, we're going to tell you something. You're the only one who's going to know about it. So if it gets out, we'll know it's you. And they tell him that the movie will be edited when they're going to add, obviously, the voice of James Earl Jones. And they forgot there, I am your father. And for months, young Mark Hamill had to keep it. And then he go to the premiere and he sat next to Harrison Ford, who can say, hang on a minute, you never told us about this.
Absolutely right. But they were sort of saying, maybe Luke's going to kill Han Solo, because he's falling in love with Princess Leia, and of course, Luke Skywalker's the one who should end up with Princess Leia, and of course, that was again before we knew that they
Yes.
were actually brother and sister. So it was very clever. The rumor mill was quite rife, even in the days when spreading rumors was harder than it is in the communications world that we live in now.
And the one tactic that I picked on for the original review of The Empire Strikes Back was this idea of always linking back to your origins and always linking back to the source. Now we know that George Lucas was vastly inspired by 1950s radio and TV series, Flash Gordon and more. And of course, this created a very unique universe. So what they did do, because this was a tough one to promote because The Empire Strikes Back, as we know, is much, much darker, much, much darker. And to this day, still voted as the best one in the entire, well, it's not trilogy anymore. There's 9 of them. We'll ignore the other 6. But so the idea of how do you get people still excited and enthused about it? So what they did do actually was to create a one-off unique trailer where they actually play to the 90s, 50s radio shows, and you have essentially a voiceover from Harrison Ford that sounds very, very traditional and almost old-fashioned for 1980. But it's this idea of building on nostalgia and making sure that people don't forget Star Wars. It's source material, if you will, and the origin is, of course, the George Lucas' own childhood. I thought it was a really nice way to go about it because what else is left? You can't do a trailer that matches the dark undertone of Empire. It would be too much of a disconnect from A New Hope. So yeah, I like that, and we're so lucky that today there are many, many film historians who share those things on YouTube and beyond for you and I to find out.
Yeah, no, it's always good to revisit these things, Pascal. So there you have it. Pascal and Roger's marketing show live. 30 minutes flashing by in an absolute heartbeat. It's always a pleasure to get together with you, Pascal, and talk about marketing topics and film marketing topics, of course. We've got a new episode of Two Geeks and a Marketing Podcast coming up in the next few weeks and we'll let you know when that goes live. But in the meantime, if you've enjoyed this live show, do please leave us a comment below. If LinkedIn was good enough to let you see our show, I mean, sometimes I do wonder whether LinkedIn shows any of my posts to anybody anymore, given the sort of the crickets that you sometimes get with LinkedIn posts. But hopefully, some of you will have seen this live today. But if you didn't see it live and you watched it on the replay, thanks for watching the replay. But do leave us a comment below and let us know what you thought.